Hi, I'm Elizabeth Coffin. I live right across the street, and I've been happily associated with the Basket Museum as the gardener in residence. But in the early, about 2003, I think, maybe 15 years ago. Oh, there's a cell phone going off.
Well, I forgot to mention that everyone can silence their cell phone.
Okay, but I was just worried if it was mine, because I didn't silence mine.
I think it's in the room.
Yes, it is. That's why I left it. What was happening was that I was going to the landfill, and I was seeing the discarded chairs. And I'm a preservationist. By inclination and by training. My father was an art historian. My mother was a rare book person. And so we've always valued, my grandfather was an architect who worked a lot in Nantucket with Mr. Beinecke, rebuilding the old structures. And in fact, I had the 106 Main Street facade sitting in my yard for 6 years before I found somebody, or Sheila Fee from Flock found it and took it and rebuilt it and used it. I really don't like to see things that have value, that have had human handwork put into them. And I hate to see them thrown away if they can be made, if you can make them functional again. This one happened to be a particularly good one. Oh, and anyway, in the beginning of the 2003, I was seeing more and more of these broken chairs left to be thrown out, and I realized that I didn't know of anybody who was doing it, and so I talked to a man named Peter Wilson, who was older. He was retired, and I asked him to teach me. And he did. I created a de facto apprenticeship for them. Very, very kind. You need a certain, I must say, you need a certain temperament to be a cane worker. You have to have lots of patience and lots of perseverance. Why it looks like, they used to make the joke about, basket making. It's being, for not bright people, but in fact, chair caning, which looks very, it can look very matter of fact, has lots and lots of judgments that you have to make. And your focus, the people who like doing it are people who like deep focus work. Because you really have to push everything else out of your head in order to follow what you're doing. Because you take your attention off of it, and then you don't know where you are. You just get lost in this maze of canery. Now, this one was a particularly nice example of work, and the best, and it has a binding around it, which I'd never seen anywhere, and I've never seen it in any books. There are books for chair caning, which you can find easily enough. There's a wonderful supply house that I use, which is H.H. Perkins in North Haven, Connecticut, and they have been selling cane since 1918. And still at it, generations later. But I had never seen this, and I'm going to take it apart and try to teach myself how to recreate it, because it was done by somebody who was really smart and talented and experienced. And the way you can tell a good previous hand worker is that there's very little on the bottom. It's very tight, very clean. The cleaner it is, the more experienced and the better the hand worker.
Would there be little pieces
Yeah, well, because you're cutting strings and poking them in holes and weaving them together, and you can have long strings, although they tend to break down towards the end of their use because, like anything, they've been put through so much friction that they're going to fatigue. But this is how you tell a really professional, good job. Yes, because otherwise there are hundreds and hundreds of little nope, not this one. We'll see. Well, you can see all those cut-ins? And everywhere that you have a peg, it's probably holding a cut-in down in place. So there, the thing about just a little background on chairs and caning. It's about in the 18th century that the supply of cane began to get predictable, and they started using it to create this new. It was furniture which was extremely lightweight. That's one of its main values, because you can take these chairs and put them around anywhere. They travel beautifully if you need to carry them around. They're quite. I think they're just wonderful. And this design, which is the hexagonals that are all put together, is a way of distributing the weight of the body, right? Because it's going in all these different directions, and that holds the body weight very, very well. And it's lightweight because you don't have a solid plank, and it is. It's very effective seating. Comfortable, too. So instead of in the 17th century, you'd have a plank seat, and you would have to end up putting a cushion on it. You'd have to end up trying to make it more comfortable. In the colonies, the first that they used before they got the ready supply of rattan cane was rush, cattails. And the rush work is comfortable too. And it lasts about as long as and really old chairs, in museums, you will see that the old examples of rush work. That's even harder to find the person to do that work than the caning. The thing was that it was done in England by the Basket Guild in the 17th century. The Basket Guild they worked with willow before they got cane. And they needed a guild and a medieval group of, organization of artisans, because baskets were used in the marketplace to sell products by volume rather than weight. You weren't, there weren't scales everywhere, except for, precious metals. So volume meant that the guild had to regulate the making of the baskets. And they are the ones who sort of lent themselves to taking on the seat making and caning. Now, when it came across the United States, it was most of the examples of chairs that we see are from here in Nantucket, are from the early 19th, maybe 1830 up until now. But we're so conservative here because these things come out of the attic. And they have a long history. People hold on to these chairs until they can't figure out what to do with them any longer. And that's why, nobody really wants to throw them out, but they're such a space and storage problem that this skill needs to be redeveloped here, because we've got these old products. They were really quite democratic in the sense that people could afford them. These were middle class people could afford them. You could have them in your house. This is, gold stencil work. It was a fancy chair, is what it was called. Sometimes you find them painted. This happens to be just stencil work. But they have tremendous amount of work put into them. There were factories of chair making, but each one of these factories could produce these pieces, the turnings, and put them together, but they still had to have it hand-woven seat. So cottage, especially in Gardner, Massachusetts, is known as a center for, there was a whole entire cottage industry of homemakers and elderly people, or anybody who could turn their hand to it would be taking the product from the factory owner and weaving it and turning back and getting a certain small sum of money. But Massachusetts has long been known for the center of this chair-making production. And by 1865, with the Industrial Revolution quickening, they devised a machine to make pressed cane together. This is not an example of the machine, but this is an example of what you get when you buy your piece of pre-woven material. And around the corners here, there's a channel that's dug, and then a spline, which is a piece of soft rattan from the inside of the rattan, and it holds down the pre-fabricated material. I don't think it's as good as the handwork structurally, because one of the other things that when you do this is you're pulling together all of the elements of the chair. So you have a chair that responds organically. It can move and squirm and go with people's bodies, but it also is held together so nicely. Now, usually when you find them, they've been squirmed in too much, and you have to do a little bit of repair work. This board has separated. It takes virtually nothing for me to take a big rubber mallet, some glue, and knock it into shape and re-glue it. You have to re-glue your chairs every generation anyway. For the most part, because unless they're all made of one piece of unbroken material, they disassociate from each other. Everything dries up. The cane lasts for about, if you're lucky, a generation, depending upon the amount of use and abuse it's been given. The pressed cane came into being because they could produce more faster. So you have huge quantities of these old chairs left all over the country. We've lost most of them, but some of them are going to actually be preserved. And in order to do that, I wanted to get a group of start teaching more people. And I had a lovely group of cane workers, people who already knew how to use cane because they had learned it in order to do their baskets. Because cane, as an organic material, this is just not a machine. You almost think of it as a living piece, because it can twist in your hands while you're working in it, and it breaks, and it does all sorts of interesting things that you didn't expect. So you have to the people that I was teaching for the Lightship Basket Museum did wonderful work. They took to it, they wanted it, and they all had a chair in their basement that they knew that they needed to address, and they'd been hanging on to it for 20 years or so. So, and Bernice, who's here, had a chair that was interesting in the sense that it had the holes, and it had previously been caned, but then somebody had come along and recaned it with a machine made. And they had dug that where the holes were, they had dug the channel, with a drill or a bit of some sort, and created this channel, put in the press. And so Bernice took out the old pressed and returned to the earlier hand caning, and did a lovely, successful job. And I think her chair that's hand caned now is going to last longer than the pressed cane, because the pressed cane is not really, it's only attached to the chair by glue. Glue dries out. Or things pop. And whereas each one of these holes that it's in here has been strung and been wrapped and tied and or retied and has been thoroughly attached. So there's also another chair here. This is a very nice chair. It was, and here you see the holes. Can you see? You see the holes, and but this chair had not originally started out life as a cane chair. It had started out as a rush or cord chair. And the way you can tell that is because this bar's been put on, and these are side pieces. They come off. You then wrap it with the rush or paperwork, and then put these back on. But somebody wanted to alter it, and did. Because, as I said, it's harder to find rush workers than it is to find cane workers. So they drilled the holes in it and created this, it's an evolved chair, okay? But if you have really, really conservative cultures, and the Nantucket 19th and early 20th century cultures, they don't want to let go of too much. And until you hit pockets of affluence, you can't afford to let them go. So now, anyway, Bernice reverted to the earlier form of the chair. I want to talk about the tools and the materials and the process. The process is not difficult, but it can be quite challenging in ways that it's hard to comprehend sometimes. There are 7 stages of working the cane. The first stage, now you see this is an old chair. It's got a broken back. right here, it's missing it. But it was lovely bird's eye maple, so somebody really wanted to keep it. No reason why you can't, as long as you're willing to do the work. So you have here the beginning of the process. The first process takes this, and you soak it in water. You have to soak it in water because otherwise it's going to crack and break. When you're working, it's good to do it in the summertime or someplace where you can put a lot of, you can make a mess. But once you soak it, it develops a suppleness so that it can go in all different directions. It can tie itself onto itself. It can, it really can go a lot of places. And it has to, because you start out, you have it empty, you've cleaned all the old glue and you've glued the chair back in together, and you start just at the middle and you put your first step in, anchor it, and then go to the back. And at the back, you go down, you anchor it, and then you come up, so you go sideways. You come up sideways into a neighbor hole. You prevent the cane from twisting and turning because you want to keep it all working in the same plane. Because while it will twist and can twist and does twist, in order for you to be most successful in the sense that you put less pressure. When it's twisted, it won't take the pressure as well. When you keep it all in the same plane, you get a clean bottom, clean top, and by clean I mean it's smooth. So anyway, you come up the neighboring hole, you go over back down, come up, and so you go. The first stage will be when you've put all of them in vertical format. Second stage is you will go then horizontally. You start again here in the middle, go through, come up, down, up and down, and making certain that two things, that this is tight and, not tight, but flat and close to the chair itself, so that there's no draggy loops underneath. But you can't do it too tight because you've got to be working the stuff above. And when it's wet and supple, it will, you can push it and pull it in all sorts of ways, but as soon, it will dry. And then when it dries, it contracts and everything gets taut and chair, looks more like your normal chair seat. And it dries, it conforms to the holes, it conforms to, what you've asked of it. But you've only done two of the, you've done you've done the verticals and you've done the horizontals. And that's enough for today. You have to bring it back the next day and get it wet. And this means that put a lot of cloth, wet cloth. People use spray bottles. They use, the thing about caning is that people invent a lot of personal solutions for how they want to do it. But there is no getting around the fact that you have to have it wet. So you leave enough room so that you've done your first set of verticals and first set of horizontals on top of the verticals. And then your third set of going through is another set of verticals. Now, So you've got a layer, there's sandwiching of these strings. And the fourth set is when you start to weave. And it is a horizontal that you weave, and it is, here's an example of one being woven. And you can see that there's enough give here so that you can work in and out of the, you go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. It's fun because you're starting to get some definition. You're starting to make those little squares, which you then have to continue to work with. Now, it will slide beautifully because the silicon nature of the outside of the material likes to move. But you have to, it's amazingly strong and an amazingly weak sometimes. It can split inside of itself. It can, anyway, the cane workers, have a lot of experience with what the cane can do, and the quality of the cane will also be dependent on what kind of a product you're able to achieve. So that fourth sequence is weaving, and you have something that looks like a recognizably, here's these little boxes that you've created in the air. And you have to kind of keep on pressing them together so that you have couples here and then couples here. Because after this, the fifth step, you're going to start working on the oblique, going from cross to cross. Here. No. Can you? No, this is the wrong chair. Sorry. This chair. There's the cross. There's the obliques. See? Okay. And so you go this way, this way. This is where it starts to get more fun or more challenging. I'll tell you why, but I want to just go through the steps that you.
I was just going to show.
Oh, good. Ashley's my prize student.
I think Bernice is.
Both. With you both met different challenges.
Let's see, I've almost gone the one direction.
Here.
And now I'm going to have to go the other way.
You return this way.
That'll be...
And when you've done that, you've created that pattern.
Yeah. That octave.
Yeah. So that's six stages. 6 stages. And the seventh stage is the binding stage. Here, I'll just put this way. Can you see? Here's the binding stage. I find the binding stage to be the most difficult because you're putting in extra pieces of cane into holes that have already got 6 or strands in them. So you really end up using more tools and more agility. I go under the chair, I turn the chair, I turn it upside down, I turn it sideways. I do everything in order to try to get this last piece, which, you don't need, in other words, strictly utilitarian purposes, you don't need it, but it looks so much nicer. So here's what it looks like when it's not bound. Now the problem at this point, that you then, as you do your obliques, you start to meet the places where you have to make decisions, because this is not this is not a true square. You're asking it to have orthogonal-like quality to it, but it's not a genuine square. And so you end up putting in extra, because it's fuller here at the front, because that's where you're sitting. As you go back, it will narrow. Some of it's, here you see, some of it can be quite extreme. Some of it is, pretty normal. This is also curved. So you have short rows that you had put in extra pieces right here, and an extra piece up here. And in order and doing that to follow it, you now have to work out where you're going to set the ends. You make decisions about these. Some of these you end up putting two in one hole. If you come closer, you can see this oblique has been put in the same hole as this one. They're called fish eyes when they have to come together, because you don't have a true square.
Would a circle be a nightmare then?
Circle's got its own challenges. I don't think it's a nightmare. It's just some different sets of decisions that you make at the later stages of the weaving, and that's where your brain has to come in, and that's what's interesting. This is not for feeble. I know of a judge who does this. People who do play chess do this. It's the same kind of, you have to make some of the same kinds of thinking decisions. It's not a non-thinking task. Although it has, sometimes you can get a really lovely rhythm the way you do with any kind of weaving, and you get such satisfaction when it all flows together and you think you're fine, and then it breaks. Or, the natural things happen. So it's the shape of the seat that will really determine how difficult it is to work. Here's a piece of paper that says, avoid out of whack patterns. Part 1, and there's part 2. These are, I'll send it around, and you can see that when you resolve certain places, you've got to make adjustments for the fact that it's going to be out of true. So this isn't machine work. It's really a genuine craft, because you do end up having to use the brain. Here's what the cane comes like. This is, and it comes in different gauges, different widths. This is narrow medium, and I think narrow medium is the nicest for working on these mid-19th century chairs and late 19th century chairs, and either Victorian chairs. It's 2.75 milligrams, and it's called narrow medium. But here is an example of all the other sizes. It goes from carriage fine, carriage being, they use the cane for carriages, and they started, they really started doing it. They really needed to get there in the Industrial Revolution to create that pressed cane because of trolley cars and all of those public conveyances used, a lot of them used cane. Anyway, it goes from carriage fine through to super fine, fine, narrow, common, wide binder. When you put your binder around, it's usually one size larger than the what you've worked with. So here, just pass it around, take a look at it. Here are the little hardwood dowels, pegs. Some people use golf tees. Anything. And we end up inventing whatever we can to work it. This is what it comes like, and then you pull it open, and it's got to relax.
Behind you, Liz. On the wall.
Yeah.
Keep turning. No, next to the jawbone.
Yeah.
Yeah. That this is a narrow medium. And I had to get it to relax enough in order to get it, and then I curled it up and put it in the water, and then, but I left one long strand of this outside on my porch and was totally unhappy to find that the mildew, the mold got to it. I then had, then basically had to start bleaching it and try to dry it out and get it so it could perform. But just a word to the wise, it's an organic material. This is a device for measuring the size, because when you find the old one, you have to figure out what you want to put back into the new. And this is a gauge that will tell you various metrics for your. Now, here is a set of clippers. That's the thing you end up using in your hand all the time. And short, they just cut it fast, and you can do very fine manual work with it. But they're quite sharp. I always put them in corks. Here's the other tool that you end up using a fair amount towards. This is like an awl, just a pin, sharp, very sharp. And I always tell everybody, please, as soon as you put it down, put it in because it's tetanus shot waiting, right? You use this to clean out the holes of the old fabric, to open them up, and you use it to lift the parts that are that you need to get in and under. You use it to any way you can for all sorts of things. This happens to be one I got at the landfill too, and it has I don't like the curve, but I liked the length, and this has a sort of spatula type ending, and so I can put that underneath and lift it more successfully than this, which is too thin in some applications. So this happens to be any kind of slot screwdriver with a small enough edge you can use. Okay, I've come to a natural pause. Let's. Can I entertain some questions before I get going on anything else?
The one question
question we get is how long does it take to make basket? So how long does it take to
good.
make an average chair?
Well, if we're going to consider this as the average chair, right? This sort of mid-19th century or Victorian product. It has, it has numbers. The holes, the number of holes create the length of some of the length of work time, and I want to talk about the economics of that after we finish. I can do it if I dedicate myself to it in 3 or 4 days. There's 7 steps, but I don't like to. I mean, my brain is not really that thrilled about trying to do the same, make the same kinds of decisions. Also, I don't have uninterrupted time. Again, I'm not out to sea. None of us are. So you get a lot of interruptions, and you can't keep doing this if you're interrupted. Because when you're interrupted, then you've got a whole chain and sequence of actions that you then have to start and stop and start again. And it doesn't work so readily if you're entertaining a lot of other things. And the people who liked the course that we did were people who were very busy otherwise, but they came in and they could just stand in front of this thing and they could just do it. And they blotted up their other problems out of their life. So it does have that side effect. So the length of time can take anywhere from 3-4 days to a month, 2 months. Some of my tough jobs have taken me 3 months getting back to them and resolving problems as I go along with them. Now the thing about this is we're caught betwixt and between because the economics of doing this are all, as I say, upside down. You cannot get paid successfully for the amount of time and labor that you put in it, because the chair ultimately is not worth the amount of money, that time that you've put into it. Say you wanted a $15 an hour wage. Well, you've been putting, you put 15 to 20 hours in. Good. And so it goes from anywhere from $150 to $300 right there. And you cannot sell this chair for $300. You can't sell it for $200. You can't, so I end up talking to people a lot about the sentiment. How attached are they to the chairs? What does it mean to them? Are they willing to make that investment to have me spend my time doing it and getting it to where they can use it again? And by the time people come to ask about it, they do want it. They made some kind of emotional commitment to it. But I would like to teach more people so that it was being done more, and we could maybe start by redoing it. You've enhanced the value of it. If it had to go out into the marketplace, if Raphael Osona had to sell it, he would start to get higher prices as these get scarcer, and yet they're still useful. So there is a way of changing the economics of it, but it's going to take a long time, and we've got to have a skilled workforce to do it. And that's the idea of me trying to teach people to do it. At H.H. Perkins, they told me that in Connecticut, the typical chair now costs $275 to retain. But I know that I can spend $25 worth of materials and not even that, say $15 worth of materials and 15 hours of my time, and I'll have a chair that is worthy. And then I tend to, how do I make the decision about what I charge people? I go according to what I think the person can handle. For me, it's not a professional job. I don't have to live on the income. And I don't think anybody has ever successfully lived for any length of time, with one exception that I know of, and that is, and that's also the reason why I'm here, is Jose Reyes. Jose Reyes, before he made the friendship baskets, his bread and butter work. He's a man with a Harvard education. I mean, so we're not talking stupid or silly. We're talking about highly, refined person. He fed his young family on the whatever he could do, which was painting and recaning chairs. So I'm delighted that this is Jose's. The whole exhibit is dedicated to Jose's, and this is some of the underpinnings of how he stayed attached to the Nantucket community. For all we know, the chairs that we're picking up in the landfill might have been done by him. It might pass through his hands. We don't know, because it's unsigned. It's not artistic per se. It doesn't have this enhanced value, but it does create a lovely seating in your home. And the economics are tough, I think, because then you end up doing something that's called a labor of love. And I don't know how that's gonna end up working out. But I don't want the skills to be lost. I want to have the skills there. And people can teach themselves. There's a fair amount of written literature. H.H. Perkins always hands out a little booklet that gives you with lovely photographs, and you can do it yourself easily, but it's a commitment of time. So it's, right, we're saying 15 hours maybe for a normal chair. The good thing that I can see is that in the future is that the young millennials don't want any part of this. This is part of the brown furniture phenomenon. And it's painful for those of us who grew up with it and like it and find value in it and want to maintain it. But the millennials are going to get clipped by this because they're now really gung-ho with mid-century modern furniture. Well, that was done a lot by the Danes. And the Danes, as seafaring people, use cord for their seats, rope cord. And so all of these mid-century high-end pieces, which are now realizing a hefty price in the marketplace, will have to be redone too. And somebody's got to be able to do it. And so now you have a chair that is more valuable, and the person who has the skills can match, get a better fee, basically. I have a Hans Wagner chair. It's called The Chair. I found it on an island in a basement, and I've got to reassemble it. But I'm going to try to I'm going to teach myself how to do that mid-century fabrication, so that I can keep those things, help keep those alive. I know there's lots of other things I'm missing, but I was tickled pink when I read in the Paul Whitten's biography of Jose Reyes that once he'd made his Lightship friendship baskets, he put aside his caning work, the chair work. He didn't return to it. He'd created an economic product and an artistic product that supported his family and made him, proud of his handwork. Is there any other kinds of questions? I'm going to start.
Small question. We had a chair that had powder post beetles in it, and we shipped it off. We brought it over to Hyannis, to that lovely company that dips furniture to get rid of powder post beetles.
Did it work?
It worked great, and the caning came out beautiful. We thought that, because when we brought it in, the man said to us, I can't guarantee you the caning's what's gonna happen? This is, strong chemicals.
You put the caning in the chemicals.
The whole chair went. The
Okay.
chairs it was a dining room, and one chair
Yeah.
he found had powder post beetles in it. So we brought it over, and he said, I don't know what's gonna happen with the cane. I haven't done cane. I haven't dipped cane. I had to sign this waiver. And we said, well, what happens, happens. It came out beautiful. But it was a little bit different color. Tight as can be still, because we could compare it with 5 other chairs that had all been done at the same time.
They loosen and tighten depending upon how much water they've, fluid they've.
Well, this went through a big chemical dipping, and it's been great. But is there something I should put on that cane?
Well, let's talk. Yeah, we can talk about maintenance of them because the outside of the cane has this silicone, natural silicone on it. That's what makes it slide through. But you do when you're sliding it through, you have to make certain there are nodes in this cane, nodes where the bamboo has got had been side growth, right? So they've shaved the node off very close, but that node is like a little slight bump, and you want to get the cane going in the right direction because otherwise you'll be pulling it and against the grain, and then sometimes you can just slide it. But the silicone on one side leaves on the other side an open and receptive fluid hydrous. It takes water, and it's water that is going to help maintain the chair, the cane, because it loves to be hydrated. And I will put this moist cloth right on there for an hour, and it will loosen up slightly. But then you dry it out, not in sunlight, and you don't leave the chairs next to radiator vents and hot blowing air. You try to what?
Not in sunlight, you said?
No, not in sunlight. It's too fast.
Oh, okay.
You want it to reabsorb slowly, so that it can hold it in slowly. If you dry it too fast, it will just give over too fast. So, and then some people will put tongue oil on the outside. And it used to be shellac, but they tell me, I love shellac. I've always loved shellac.
Little baskets with shellac.
Yeah, but they say that it dries out the cane faster.
But it's easy to fix.
What?
An old basket that's been shellacked.
It's what?
It's easier to fix than a basket that's been polyurethane because it's easier to take it apart with shellac and refix it. So it might be easier to fix a chair that was shellac.
Yeah. I put shellac on the, I think that's been shellac. I put a little bit of shellac there to liven up the wood and to repair it. But they now use tongue oil, which is, they've used tongue oil for, like gun stocks, any really fine woodwork. But I'm happy with shellac. And you only shellac the top. You never shellac the bottom because you want it that's where the cane is breathing. Yeah. and you need to keep it and try to keep it moist or moister, but not enough to support mildew, and it's a really forgiving, accepting material. It does. It's this anomaly of creating this really man-made grid with organic material and offbeat patterns of seats. That's really the thing of it. It's a really human cultural activity, because it's so various. Every chair is different. Most of them. I mean, you get sets of them for dining rooms, but all of these are different pieces. They all share things in common, but they're all different individuals, and that gives me the challenge to keep on doing it, to keep on making the programs. Now, I would love to have set up an arrangement whereby people could learn the skill and pass it along, or use it to keep these guys alive longer. And I'm trying to figure out how to go about doing it. And you're part of my crew of people who need to give me some advice on where and how to help promote it. Are there other questions?
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
You sure? Okay, good.
Thank you, ma'am.
What about the high schools, or the schools?
Yeah, the schools. I don't know if the kids have the patience. No, I think, the new technology has changed the their attention. And I think there always will be some people who are introverted and happily, working and focused and are attracted to doing it. But I just don't know enough young people to tell you that, because it seems to me that they're much happier cruising around, talking on their machines. They're quite dexterous, though. I mean, they've got that small hand skills, right?
And they got really good eyes still.
Yes, they've got it.
Their eyesight is still really good.
Yes, and that's another thing. It's the eyesight is really. I can't do this at night, only during the day. Yeah, natural light helps. Okay, thank you.